The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to the Standardisation webinar for Advanced Technical Diploma in Hairdressing. My name is Alison Atkinson and in the room with me today is Caroline Puttock, who is the Principal Moderator for Level 3. Before we begin, I'd like to highlight the lines of support for all technical qualifications. There's a range of guidance documents found on the City and Guilds website under the Technicals and TechBack tab. Secondly, the Technicals Quality Team will give you email or phone support. Their number is 0300 303 5352, followed by option 2, then option 3. Their email address is technical.quality@cityandguilds.com. And finally, many vocational areas have technical advisors who will visit your centre to give face-to-face support as required. City and Guilds have recently produced some bite-sized webinars which give generic guidance, but today we aim to give you subject-specific standardisation support using some candidate work from last year's synoptic assignment for hairdressing. Okay, so let's look at the objectives of this session. We're going to explain the justification of marks by the Principal Moderator for last year's synoptic assignment and highlight good practice in the use of City and Guilds documents. Taking part in this webinar can be part of your internal standardisation, which is an important aspect of quality assurance of the technical qualifications. So at the end of the slides, we'll remind you of typical activities recommended for internal standardisation. I'm going to hand you over to Caroline, who is the Principal Moderator for this qualification, and she's going to take you through some slides.
Hello, my name's Caroline Puttock and I'm the PM for Level 3. First off, we'll remind ourselves of what the candidates are asked to do. I'd like to just confirm that we are looking at last year's synoptic assignment. The assignment brief is different to the tasks. It is given to the candidate 4 weeks prior to the start of the synoptic assessment date. It is an overview of this assignment requirements and gives an idea of what candidates must carry out. This gives them a chance to plan and arrange their clients. Let's look at the assignment brief and the hairdressing services they are required to carry out. Creative cut and finish that must have a restyle and an element of disconnection. A creative colour and finish to 50% of the client's head, which also must include an element of colour correction. Finally, to style and dress long hair, which must include putting the hair up. These services can be combined or carried out separately, but they must be on the minimum of 2 different clients. These services will be carried out within the required 6 hours during the exam. So this is given in advance of the synoptic assignment, Task 2, so that they have time to source their clients and research their looks. Candidates are also expected to evaluate their performance. We're moving on to the tasks. On this slide, we are looking at Task 1, where they have to produce consultation records. The consultation records and service plans must explain the services chosen for each client and services carried out. A recording form has been provided in the synoptic pack to use for each client. Plans can be produced taking into account the factors that could limit the candidate's required outcome for each service. To achieve higher marks, candidates should be encouraged to provide logical reasoning with tailored recommendations to demonstrate their breadth and depth of knowledge and understanding across all services. The work produced is under supervised condition. It is collected in by the tutor at each stage and must be the candidate's own work. Task 2 asks the candidate to provide hairdressing services to a minimum of 2 clients. For the cutting and finish task, the candidate must ensure they keep to the requirements of the brief regarding the length, shape and style being altered. For example, adjusting a fringe or undercutting at the nape area is not sufficient alteration to the shape or the style. The creative colour service must have an element of colour correction, and Level 3 candidates are expected to be able to use a variety of techniques to achieve the required outcome. For example, applying a pre-pigmentation as your colour correction element, and then applying a full head colour does not show Level 3 skills or knowledge, so candidates can be disadvantaged if they carry out such basic work. When creative styling and finishing, 80% of the hair must be taken up and the hair must be set prior to the service. Examples of these are thermal setting, dry or wet setting. It should also be noted that candidates can use added hair as part of the hair up, but it must be prepared as part of the service. All work is carried out under supervised conditions, with the tutor recording the quality of the performance on the practical observation form, known as the PO. At the end of Task 1 and 2, the candidate will have produced consultation summaries, service plans, and some will have record cards. Photographic evidence of all their work, which should be 360-degree views, front, back and both sides. They should also include some during photos of colour placement and setting of the hair prior to the hair up service. Here we can see photos of candidates' work. We have two side views, front and a back view, and a view of the colour placement during the service. Here we can see photos of candidates' cutting and finish service. All required photos have been completed and the candidate has also undercut at the nape area, which we will see later on has impacted on their marks awarded in AO3. The next slide shows the photograph evidence of the hair up service. Again, not just the outcome, but the process too. This last photo shows the use of techniques which were used and will help the marker and moderator to judge the level of technical ability shown. There is, however, no evidence here for the set prior to the hair being taken up. Remember, this evidence is required to support the candidate's outcome and marks awarded. Task 3. Ask candidate to show how well they think they met their client's requirements and the service plans. To gain good marks, they must critically evaluate each service they carry out during the synoptic assignment, showing what went well and explain areas of improvement. In doing this, they must describe how they might deal with these issues and show how they can improve the service or the outcome. The candidate's evaluation needs to be reflective rather than descriptive account. So in other words, they must be able to reflect on their practice rather than give a running commentary of what they did. This must also show clear links from theory to practical. We are now going to look at the marking grid, not marketing, and take a while to go through each of the assessment objectives. The first one being recall of knowledge. AO1 relates to the subject-specific knowledge for which we deliver during the course. Examples of where this may be seen are in the candidate's use of technical terms, selection of tools, materials, equipment and processes, and the candidate being aware of health and safety while preparing and carrying out each service. So how does the marker, tutor, of the synoptic assignment, firstly, they must observe the practical work and make judgment as to how well the activities are carried out. They must note down the judgments on the PO forms. We can see on the next slide an example of a completed PO form. The PO form can be handwritten or completed electronically. Just ensure that handwriting is legible, particularly when the document has been scanned, as the moderator needs to be able to read the evidence. PO forms are a critical piece of evidence the centre observer produces during practical performance. If completed well, it will bring the observation and performance of the candidate to life. The observer should describe how well the candidate performed against each AO. The band description should be used as a guide when marking, but not be copied word for word. We can see here that AO1, the candidate, has presented herself well, had a good attitude to her client and adhered to her plan when carrying out tests. We must ensure that when noting how well a candidate did in AO, that any comments only refer to what was being assessed or seen in the marking grid. I have highlighted here an aspect which does not belong in the AO. Application of skills was commercial across all services, except the finish and creative cut, where the blow dry was not moulded correctly, therefore didn't lie and looked choppy or uneven. The comment above does not link to this AO. AO1 covers recall of knowledge. Notes made on this document should show candidates' breadth and depth of knowledge during the practical task. This she may state to you, the client or their colleague during the task. 1. Stating a fact. They don't have to explain them at this point. That goes in AO2. 2. Simple description of what they're carrying out. Again, they don't have to say why at this point. That goes into AO2. Showing aspects of straightforward knowledge through logical sequencing and application of skills. For example, are they doing things in the correct order? To clarify, the comments on the PA form should explain how the candidate has performed against the objectives, giving some examples to back up your judgment. So we are now going to have a look at the marks. I have included the candidate's record form, CRF. Just to be clear though, we only mark at the end of the task 1 through to 3 have all been handed in. This is looked at holistically and the marks are justified on the CRF like this. The CRF form is key document. Care should be taken to ensure that the marks along the top of each AO relate specifically to your qualification, as each one may differ. Marks will relate to knowledge shown in all 3 tasks, which are their plans, their services, and their evaluation. We can see that this candidate has received marks of 5 out of 6, meaning she is good on her knowledge. There has been enough justification for a third party, the moderator, or the internal QA, to see where and why marks have been given and why marks are not given. We can see that the marker clearly identified what went well and gave areas of improvement, for example, advice given to the client. Moving on to AO2, which is understanding. Here, the marking grid in AO2. Here we are looking understanding of concepts, theories and processes. How well did they justify their actions and explain what and why they were doing something? Their explanations should be sufficiently in-depth and detailed to show comprehension and understanding in order to source the higher marks. There are examples in all the AOs of where you might find the evidence. So here we have examples as how they interpreted their tests, their planning methods or consideration of factors. Usually understanding is seen in what they say or write. So in a practical situation, you may have to ask an oral question before you can determine how well they understand. Here in the PO form for AO2, the candidate has shown excellent understanding by planning and marking informed decision on her working methods. The comments seen here show that the marking grid has been referred to and understanding can be demonstrated by what the candidate talked about with their client. It may not be necessary to carry out extensive verbal questioning. You might just hear their understanding in what they say to the client. Ways of determining understanding in a practical performance, which may be discussed with the tutor or the client, are the following: their explanation of why they are completing a process, how they may change the course of action, how they justify their actions, or their explanation of the consequences of doing or not doing something. On the next slide, we have the CRF, where the marker clearly identifies what went well and gives one area of improvement. Again, advice given to the client. This slight area of weakness shows why she received 8 out of 9 marks. If we relate this to the band descriptors, we can see that justification comments make reflections to the bands but do not copy them word for word. Now going on to AO3, which is a practical skill. This covers the dexterity, fluidity, confidence and candidate's ease of application. AO3 is assessed in the hairdressing synoptic task 2. This AO is all about dexterity and technical skills. How practical or fluid is their hand-eye coordination? How confident are they in using their skills to reach a good end result? If a candidate receives good marks here, their skills will look fluid and second nature. We can see here that there are many examples of where a candidate will show their practical skills. Make sure you give some examples of these aspects when commenting on this AO. A major focus of this AO is industry performance, communication and creativity. Remember that the candidate will also show evidence of all other AOs when carrying out a practical activity. But this is an important one as it is 15 out of 16 available marks. Let's look at the notes on the PO form. As you can see, highlighted comments state they show a good range of practical skills. The undercut and sectioning pattern was carried out successfully, with correct angles and hand-body position to achieve the short textured look. In the internal shape, not enough weight was taken out. This factor compromised the overall look and finish. The comment above clearly pinpoints what the candidate did well and what she did less well at. It gives good example of the quality of her performance and allows the moderator to picture what went on during the practical task. While the rest of the comments are good on this form, it does not refer to how much the candidates were challenged. or adapted or used her skills and products. However, this mark is backed up with photographic evidence of her weaknesses in the cut and finish. On the CRF, there can be more details. This document is used to sum up the decision of where and why the marks are awarded. It's a challenge to moderators if these documents don't contain enough details, because they need to see why you thought it was worthy of the marks awarded. This said, there is enough detail on the PO form to make up for the AO3. Remember, candidates only get marked on AO3 for Task 2. Planning and evaluation are not skills per se, so marks go elsewhere for these activities. Following the plan is an AO3 skill, but creating or writing it is not necessarily in the AO3. I would suggest the following. She used creative ideas when colouring. Some creativity was demonstrated with cutting, but this was not fully explored. Cutting techniques were clearly a challenge. As a note, if they do not challenge themselves, it should be commented upon here, because it would be reflected in their marks. Candidates should not be engaged in playing it safe, because it can disadvantage them when they're showing off the full range of their abilities. Moving on to AO4, which is bringing it all together. This can sometimes pose a challenge to markers, as some of the descriptors seem like they fit better into AO2 or AO3. The way I explain AO4 is how well you think your candidate can use their knowledge and skills to solve problems, or be capable in a new situation. How employable are they? Can they deal with a client that they've never met? Can they adapt their practice? Can they use what they know about colour to achieve a good result on anyone's hair? This AO also assesses time management, their organisational skills and creativity. I sometimes liken AO4 to driving. You may take your test in daylight, but can you drive at night? How well would you deal with the glare from the lights from the car behind? You use the skill and knowledge acquired to deal with this new problem. So this is how the candidate will deal with the problems they are faced with during a difficult service. A candidate scoring good marks in this AO can make you feel confident that they can deal with difficult situations. Let's take a look at the PO comments on AO4 and ways to evidence this. I'd like to give you a few moments to just read through the comments. Let's look at some of the PO comments on AO4. How reasonable are their actions? Is it considered good practice? How well do they draw their breadth and depth of knowledge and skills? How confident are they in their abilities? Would you have them do your hair? Do they look like they know what they're saying? How well do they reflect on theory when solving practical problems? Just because they've written about it in their plan or evaluation, they may not bring this into the practice. How well can they work out solutions to problems which may occur? how to resolve their own problems. Was there any unusual factors to consider? Did they have a new client or requirement to deal with? For example, the client not turning up on the day. For each service, how commercial is their timing? Does it reflect their plan? What are the expected timescales for what they are doing? And were they adhered to? This CRF, the candidate has received 10 out of possible 15 marks. The marker has used the wording most finished looks. So it seems obvious that they are not capable of all situations. When identifying where the marks are allocated, it would have been more helpful to identify which of the finished looks were accurate or creative. This would then give a clear reasoning behind the marks awarded and allow the moderator to check this AO has been marked accurately. Remember, the moderator may not see the person during their visit. They will only have the photographic evidence submitted for judgment. Moving on to AO5, this is where we mark their attention to detail. As you can see here, this AO checks how well the candidate focuses on their tasks. Can you call them a perfectionist? Were they consistently focused on getting a good result? Or did they lose interest and forget to cross-check their cut, for example? You can see here in the marking grid, AO5 is an important one as it has 15 marks. Take care to evidence what they did to achieve these marks, as most marks should come from what they did in task 2 rather than how well they wrote their evaluation. The observer has commented well on these 3 services, enabling the moderator to make an informed decision on the quality of the candidate's attention to detail. There are not enough justifications on the CRF form because they have not referred to the photographic evidence. I would suggest this CRF should say the following: the candidate aimed for precision throughout each service. Some imperfections were noted on the PO form, but seen on the photographic evidence of colour technique. This was further corroborated in her evaluation. As such, these imperfections reduced her marks. As a reminder, candidates cannot get good marks in this AO if they fail to check the finished balance of all their services. They should have exceptional results in each of their services to gain marks in Band 3, and this should be backed up with the photographic evidence. Over the years, we have had a few questions regarding grade boundaries using these within the assignment marks. This is not considered best practice because, as you know, the grade boundaries are subject to annual change. Concentrate on assigning marks accurately and making sure the evidence supports this. Another important point to make here is the bands do not relate to past merit and distinction. They are merely given to help you identify and judge and fine-tune in the marks for your synoptic assignment.
Thanks, Caroline. So we're going to move on now to some typical examples of standardisation activities that you could carry out in your centre. Make sure that you do some of these along the way. Leaving them to the end when candidates have completed their synoptics would not be beneficial and may lead to over-generous marking or under-marking, which could result in marks being adjusted during the moderation process. To aid the process, mock synoptic assignments will help the candidate to gain confidence in the process. Consistency is key, so compare judgments of the same piece of work to ensure that standards are kept the same between markers. Use a standard approach to capturing the photographic evidence by using designated areas lighting and different backgrounds to enhance different coloured hair. Use a light coloured gown with dark hair and a dark one for light hair. This will allow the finer detail to be captured clearly, showing candidates' work from 360 angles. The uploading of candidate evidence is made easier if placed in a Word document or PowerPoint. The best way is to create a Word document for Task 1 and keep adding to it until Task 3 is completed. So all the photos go into the document with all the annotations in order, before, during and after. Then save it as a PDF and it's ready to upload. One file in chronological order makes things easy. Okay, so I'm going to leave you for a couple of minutes just to look through those internal standardisation activities. These are just a few that we recommend. Okay. Okay, so before we close, I'd like to point you to the support which we touched on earlier. These are the links to documents and resources that City and Guilds have available. The technical.quality@cityandguilds.com is the place to go for that support. And remember, their number is 0300 303 5352. I'd also like to draw your attention specifically to the qualification report, which details the data coming out of results from last year, along with hints and tips on how to avoid some of the pitfalls that centres may have fallen into in the 2019 series. It includes narrative on the synoptic assignment along with the 2 external exams, and I'm sure you'll find this very helpful. We have some further support on the website, which are 4 short presentations on delivery of the synoptic assessment, producing evidence, marking and standardisation, and submission onto the portal. Watch out because they're filed under events, as you can see here on the link. I'd like to close this webinar now and say thank you to everyone for your time. I hope it's been helpful.